Hey everybody, welcome to a new corner of the Earth OCU universe. This iteration of My Hero is going to involve a lot from Marvel, DC, and, surprisingly, Avatar The Last Airbender, believe it or not. It took a while to figure out what I wanted to do with this bit, but I came up with something that I thought was fun. With that said, we're going to have to go a bit far back before we meet Izuki Midoriya. And as always, there's going to be some changes to the lore. For instance, in My Hero's universe, most of the population has superpowers, which doesn't really work for Marvel and DC, but I wanted to keep something of the same vibe. So, in this reality, roughly 20% of Earth population is superhuman, but around 80% of Japan's specific population is superhuman. With that said, the power levels for My Hero are pretty consistently outclassed by the superhero comics they're inspired by, which is going to shape this version of Japan among other things. By the way, quirks in this world are roughly just mutant powers from Marvel, so quirk users are mutants. They're basically the same in context anyway, so I figured that making a one-to-one would make sense. In terms of how mutants are treated in this universe, it's not nearly as dire as it is in Marvel. It's basically how DC treats metahumans. Society is generally fine with them, even if they're a little scared, and there are some extreme groups who want to hurt them, but they aren't the majority. Also, even though this world is partially influenced by Avatar The Last Airbender, don't expect to meet Aang for a while. A different Avatar character is going to be taking the main character role for a little bit. Finally, and most importantly, you're going to be meeting a teenage version of one of the characters that Marvel has these days. A character who, in current continuity, is a baby. You're not going to be meeting her in this part, but just for future context, I wasn't able to get a picture of her as a teenager, because like I said, in current continuity she's a baby, and in alternate continuity she's an adult. There's really no wiggle room in between. So, I had to make art for her specifically using Canva. But, with that said, how about we all kick back, relax, and enjoy another section of the strongest Earth in the multiverse. Thanks for listening. The 7 capital cities of heaven. They existed as long as humanity had on Earth, growing stronger alongside them, though humanity was only recently starting to learn their existence. Mostly due to one place, the city of Kunlun, which had produced the mighty Iron Fist, one of the world's greatest champions. Each city, like Kunlun, produced their own champions, people capable of great things, even amongst the great cities in which they lived. But that city, Kunlun, isn't where our stories begin. Nor are the immortal cities of the Undercity, or Kunzi, the land of magic. Rather, it begins with 4 immortal cities. Omashu, the land where people are born with chi that can manipulate the earth. Agnakela, the land where the descendants of Atlanteans resided, who could manipulate water and bolster their strength with their inner chi. The Nomad State, home to those who descended from the Olympians, protected by the sky god Zeus, who inherited chi and magical abilities that granted them domain over the air. And finally, Caldera, the home of great warriors of the flame who had mastered the flame of the dragon living inside of them. The 7 cities normally didn't interact. They were only forced to once a year interact with each other for a tournament to decide their hierarchy. One that, for the past several decades, had always been won by whatever Iron Fist had been in charge at the time. But things were different among these 4. They had actively encountered each other many times. Those cities had developed a sort of symbiotic relationship with each other, filling the roles that the others had missed. But then, everything changed. 15 years ago, Kunlun collapsed, torn apart by an outside force. The Iron Fist, Danny Rand, was powerless to stop it, instead choosing to leave the remnants of his city and go out into the world. It was during this period that Danny Rand would join the Justice League, and begin protecting the world from many of its greatest threats. But without Kunlun's leadership, the tournaments continued. And without the Iron Fist, Caldera won the next one. Over the past few years, Caldera's leader, Ozai, had become harsher, almost militaristic in nature, but Kunlun had been there to temper them. Them and the threat of the Avatar, the being who would bounce between every city in each life, a prodigy in all way of keys, a being who could recreate the abilities of every heavenly city, including Kunlun, kept them in line. But the current Avatar had recently died. They weren't around anymore. And the Iron Fist was more preoccupied than ever. So Caldera moved swiftly. Ozai swept through the continent, searching fruitlessly for the current Avatar, likely a child at the time, before wiping out half the Nomad State in a day. The other heavenly cities came to their defense, just enough to avoid their complete annihilation, but it hadn't ended there. A complete military occupation was centered in every single major city. The military occupation was watching every bit of the nation for signs when the Avatar would be born. The worst thing, however, was what Ozai planned on doing. He wasn't a dumb man. He knew that if word of his conquest spread to the Iron Fist, his rule would come to a swift and painful end. Him and his powerful friends were, as much as Ozai hated to admit it, far above his league. So, Ozai went to dark magic, stolen from the city of Konzi. Magic that would seal cities off and make sure that no creature ever got in or out. They could never get help, they could never leave. And the now 6 heavenly cities knew that without their champions, they would fall within a matter of years. And Ozai would make sure to hunt them all down as quickly as possible once everything was sealed off. Their fall was all but inevitable, especially without the aid of the Iron Fist. And they wouldn't have time to train any new guardians fighting him. And they all knew it. The end was nigh. So, in a last-ditch effort to save their homes, to have someone free and willing to come back and save them eventually, their city members were evacuated as quick as possible, young and old alike, as many as possible before the cities were locked away forever. Among these individuals was a young girl, Top Beifong of Omashu, barely 4 years old and blind as a bat. Despite her family's hesitance, she learned to go out, to use the chi inherent in her body to see, like the giant moles that were incredibly populous within her city's walls. Her parents, on the other hand, would be unable to leave the city in time, leaving the girl alone in a world that she didn't fully understand. Thankfully, the young Beifong would be taken in by a wanderer, someone who knew of her home and the magic within it, and the world on the outside. This person knew what it meant that nobody would ever walk within the heavenly cities once more, and what it meant that she was one of the last carriers of her type of chi. Most importantly, he was someone who knew what it was like to grow up alone and scared in a world that you didn't really understand. So, he took her in, and he made sure that she would grow up safely and strong enough so that this tragedy wouldn't befall her. This man was named Shang-Chi. When Izuku Midoriya was 8 years old, he got earth-shattering news. 80% of Japan's population were mutants, and he wasn't one of them. He was never going to be like him, like All Might, Japan's #1 hero, member of the Justice League, champion of peace. He almost didn't think after hearing that. His blank stare mirrored his blank mind as he walked out of the waiting room and into the hall, just thinking about how his life was going to be without his dream. Could you move? A voice startled Midoriya out of his stupor. He looked to the origin to see a young girl around his age. You're blocking the vending machine. Oh, sure, Izuku said, stepping aside as the girl walked to the machine, very casually pressing the buttons in front of her. What's up with you? She asked. She bent down, grabbing the chips from the flap and casually opened them, taking a bite. Huh? Izuku asked. I'm here because my dad bounces around the world every time we go to a new country, the girl said. I have to get a physical. Oh, I'm here for quirk assessment, Izuku responded quietly. And? The girl asked. I don't have one, he sniffled. Oh, why are you sad about that? The girl said, Izuku glancing over to her. I want to be a hero and... Okay, and? The girl said back to him. Well, I don't have a... Neither does Iron Man. What's your point? She interrupted Izuku's eyes going wide. He did know that the rest of the world had quirkless heroes. It wasn't exactly a new thing, it was just... Well, no hero in Japan has ever been quirkless, Izuku said. So be the first, she replied quickly. But no hero in Japan even cracks the top 10 in heroes globally, the girl said. It was a big deal when All Might cracked the top 20. Meanwhile, the 3 out of the top 10 don't even have any powers. 4 if the rumors are true about Batman. Not sure where the whole mutant hero superiority thing came from around here, she replied calmly, eating another chip. It felt like the fog around Izuku was lifting. Nobody in his school really ever talked about that. The other kids in school just talked about the big, flashy heroes in Japan. Maybe every now and then they'd bring up Superman. I just don't know if... Izuku began, only for the girl in front of him to lift the bangs that covered her eyes. For him to see that her eyes weren't watching him. They weren't watching anything. I'm gonna be the greatest hero ever. Even stronger than my dad someday, and I'm not making any excuses. She let her hair fall back down around her eyes. No more words, no more excuses came to Izuku's mind. I'm Izuku Midoriya, he said to the girl, who casually grabbed his hand in hers. Tape Fong. Nice to meet you, crybaby. The girl smiled, neither of them knowing that they had just met the best friend that they would ever have. When Izuku came home that night, he was much less distraught than his mother expected. Between his father going missing a year ago and the whole diagnosis, she expected him to be inconsolable. Instead, he was just confused. That was until the night fell. The news blared on the screen. A villain attack in Metropolis over in the United States. Zebediah Killgrave, the Purple Man. He had brought the Justice League under his control. Every member of the team, except for one, the Batman. Izuku could only watch with bated breath. He could feel his throat closing up, the tension making his brain frizz out, the exact opposite of the man on the screen. He wasn't panicking as he faced down his teammates. He looked calm, like he had everything under control. Iron Man launched towards him, and Batman pressed a button on his gauntlet which shorted Iron Man's suit out. Superman moved towards him, but it was like he knew exactly where the Man of Steel was going, as he intercepted his jaw with a punch from Kryptonite knuckle dusters, before dodging Wonder Woman's lasso of truth. Batman disappeared in a puff of smoke as Wonder Woman swung her sword in his direction. It cut through nothing. He was nowhere to be found. Superman collapsed to the ground, coughing. As Izuku stared, he noticed the specks floating in the gas. They were green. Kryptonite. It was then that he realized that the rumors of Batman being prepared for everything were true. Even his own teammates. Wonder Woman's eyes went wide as she dropped her sword. Apparently that gas had something in it that affected her too. She looked scared. As the fight went on, Izuku couldn't peel his eyes away from the screen. Everything Batman did, as extraordinary as it was explainable. It looked like something he could do. And when Batman came out victorious in the end, holding off his team long enough for backup to arrive and for the day to be saved, Izuku knew, in that moment, his life would never be the same. Years later, 14-year-old Melissa Shield wiped her brow. This was her third attempt at making her own tech. She had watched so many tech-based heroes take the stage. Iron Man, Mr. Terrific, Hardware, just to name a few. She wasn't about to give up on taking her place among them, but just as another one of her designs failed its stress test, crashing out at about 500 pounds of force, well within human levels, she was beginning to think that she'd never accomplish it. Heck, she participated in internships at Stark Industries, and between the other members who went alongside her, like her friend Miles and Izuku, she considered herself among the least adept. She was probably the best when it came to engineering, but their minds just picked things up better than she could. The door behind her opened, as the largest man she would see in her life walked in, casting a shadow over her. "Oh, hey Uncle Mite," she said tiredly. It was, after all, her 20th hour without sleep. "If you want Dad, he's around back, and your father isn't who I came to see, Melissa." All Might pulled out a chair, his hulking body looking pretty darn ridiculous in the tiny metal folding chair. "Oh, okay, the Serious Stone, huh?" She chuckled. All Might's face didn't budge. "Your father told me what happened," All Might explained. Melissa started sweating instantly. It was nothing to her. She saw a car accident and she went in. She pulled someone out of their car even when she knew it wasn't safe. The fire on the engine was kind of a dead giveaway on that front. She figured her dad would be proud of her, but all she got was an hour-long lecture on why it was stupid, how she didn't have any protection, how the car could have exploded. But she was right there. She couldn't just let something bad happen to someone when she could help, powers or no powers. "I already got the lecture. Wait until you build your suit before you start doing hero stuff. You could have been crushed, I get it," she sighed. "You seem upset," All Might pointed out. "I am. I want to help people, and as much as I want to be, I know I'm not Tony Stark. I can't figure out how to make something even half as functional as his first Iron Man suit, but I can't just sit here doing nothing." All Might grew a small smile on his face. "Young Melissa, this world has seen truly impossible things, has experienced many great heroes coming and going, the powerless and the powerful alike, and I believe you can be one of them. There's a secret I'd like to share with you. A way that you can be a hero." "Okay, students, I have here some career aptitude tests to help you determine your path into the future," Izuku's middle school teacher said. Izuku was only half paying attention to the teacher's speech, too busy writing notes in his journal for another new design for his gear. If he was lucky, he might be able to make gauntlets similar to the ones he's seen Batman use. But who cares about all that? His teacher continued. You all want to be heroes, right? He threw his papers into the air, finally catching Izuku's attention. Izuku smirked when his teacher finally got something right for a change. Quieting down the students' cheers, the teacher looked through his notes. Oh yeah, Bakugo, you are applying to UA, right? You bet your ass. Get ready, extras, I'm about to leave you all behind in the dust. You were lucky to share a classroom with one of the only people here worth a damn. He grinned. Izuku would have ignored him like usual, but his teacher ruined that plan by instantly pointing out that he was also applying to UA. The class went dead silent. Nobody could doubt that Izuku was a force to be reckoned with. They knew him since kindergarten, and half of them had tried to bully him when he came back from the hospital with a quirkless diagnosis. It worked for the first couple of years until he learned how to fight, and how to read the weaknesses of his fellow classmates. Between studying quirkless heroes, studying Batman and the Bat family's news footage fights, and his training sessions with Toph, he was very well above capable for most of the people in his class. And he already proved to his would-be tormentors that he was above their level time and time again. But he still wasn't a mutant, and going to the fourth most prestigious hero school in the world, without any kind of mutant power, it still caused a disconnect with most of the students to even consider it. While most of the class was quiet with that revelation, Bakugo looked absolutely livid, his eyes looking like they could set the entire world on fire. When class ended, Bakugo walked up to Izuku, casting a shadow on his journal, his cronies flanking him on either side. Hi, Kachan, Izuku said casually, making Bakugo's eye twitch even more. He hated that he couldn't scare Izuku as easily anymore. What business does a quirkless nerd like you have applying to UA? He growled. Really? That old song and dance? Izuku asked, Bakugo getting closer to him. Again, Izuku didn't flinch. I want to be a hero. I applied to a hero school. Bakugo grabbed Izuku by the collar, pulling him to his face. Do you really want to fight me? Again? Izuku asked, staring Bakugo down. How did that go for you last time? In terms of their win record, Bakugo had definitely won more, but the experience Izuku gained evened them out over time. These days, when the two went up against each other, it was kind of a 50-50 toss-up who won, especially since, while Izuku constantly trained to improve his skill, Bakugo only ever did the same occasionally. Why train when you're above everybody else, after all? You bastard, Bakugo growled, Izuku spinning out of his grip and flipping to the windowsill. Look, you want to throw down again? You know where to find me, Izuku said, flipping out of the window and grabbing a tree branch to slow his fall as he landed on the ground, next to, Hey, Toph. Jeez, took you long enough, crybaby. Toph grinned as Izuku hugged the girl. Good to see you too. Sorry I haven't been back in a while. I get it, you have to move around a lot, Izuku replied. Your dad's busy. Yeah, he sure is, but that's not gonna matter, at least not for a bit, she replied. Even if she couldn't see his face, she knew he was staring. I talked him into letting me stay for a while, since we both know I'm getting into UA. She laughed, Izuku's hug getting tighter. Alright, jeez, enough, man. Sorry, Izuku responded. Right, well, we better get going, right? Toph replied. She was right. Izuku had wanted to introduce Toph to his friend from the Stark internship for a while. They were the two closest people in his life aside from his mother, after all, so when Melissa told him that she was finally going to visit Japan, he was more than excited since he hadn't seen her in such a long time. He just wished he could have gotten Miles to come with her. Walking toward their destination was uneventful, until it was. Toph stopped Izuku in his tracks as she stood as still as possible. Something's moving, directly beneath us. Izuku nodded at her. There were dozens of possibilities. Villain attacks these days were a dime a dozen. None of the possibilities were particularly good. Izuku pulled 2 wooden sticks out of his backpack, homemade billy clubs modeled after Nightwing's, before throwing the rest of the backpack away. Just as his backpack hit the floor, a jet of green sludge erupted from the ground beneath them. So, you could tell where I was. Impressive, but I'll still be taking your body. The sludge morphed into something resembling a head, 2 piercing yellow eyes emerging from beneath. Izuku steadied his breath, his first real encounter with a villain. After all the training he'd done, replicating Batman, Captain America, even Spider-Man's move from the video he'd seen. All these years he spent studying every martial artist he could get his hands on. It was about to be put to the test. The creature lunged towards him as Izuku ducked back. It splashed forward again, but Izuku flipped into the air, bringing his club down on the creature's face. It was absorbed by the thing's head, and Izuku had to let go to avoid his hand being pulled in as well. The creature moved forward again, only to be hit dead on by a rock wall, splattering it in several directions. Hey, numbnuts, forget about me? Toph shouted, launching another pillar straight through the being. As it formed back together, Izuku noticed the thing appeared to be shaky, as though the last attack Toph launched actually did something. Realizing this meant the creature probably wasn't totally amorphous, Izuku looked at Toph. Plan B! He ran forward. Toph nodded, creating a pillar under Izuku's feet and launching him to the air, over the villain who was now barreling towards Toph. Izuku reached behind his back, into a patch on his belt, and pulled out a pair of long throwing knives. As he threw them, he called upon the thousands of times he'd seen Batman's throwing motions online, as well as his hundreds of hours of replicating them. He struck the creature's eyes dead on, the only constant in its form, and immediately it howled in pain, as more green ooze began to leak down its face. Izuku pressed a button on his club as it expanded into a full-on staff. As he got into a defensive stance, Toph stood by his side. Before the two could launch another assault, the sewer grate behind the thing busted open, as a large, bulky man popped out of it. Is that All Might? Izuku asked, as his eyes stood wide. The smiling hero stood before him and spoke. So, I finally found you. All Might's glowing blue eyes locked onto the creature in its injured state. Looks like you've gotten into quite a bit of trouble. Hope you're ready for more. All Might jetted forward at speeds that nearly knocked the kids on their asses, if Todd hadn't made a wall behind them to protect them. With one mighty hit, All Might completely blew the thing apart, the shockwave tearing apart everything from the ground beneath his feet. Well, I suppose that takes care of that. The sludge villain reined to the ground as he turned to Izuku and Toph. Are you two children all right? Izuku found himself speechless being in the man's presence. He was silent until Toph elbowed him sharply in the ribs. Yeah, we're fine, Izuku managed to stutter out. All Might nodded. Well, you've done great work here today. You two should be careful, though. You aren't allowed to use your quirks in public without a license. This isn't the US. But since it was self-defense, I suppose I'll let it slide. Gee, thanks, Toph said sarcastically. This time, it was Izuku who elbowed her. It amazed him that despite being unable to see, she always found a way to glare at him. What? Shit, ask him for an autograph, why don't you? She said. The second she said that, though, All Might had already handed Izuku back his hero journal, the first page signed in giant scrawling. Izuku practically felt his heart stop. Now to contain this mess. All Might looked around. The villain splattered in a 10-meter radius. He pulled out plastic bottles from his bag with a dramatic flair. We could help you out? Izuku blurted out, drawing All Might's attention away from the villain for a moment. All Might laughed, his smile growing bigger. Well, I could certainly use the assistance if you don't— Ow! Izuku flinched as Toph grabbed his ear. Hello, Melissa? She's your friend. Are you gonna keep her waiting all day? She's waiting for us, isn't she? Toph asked calmly, letting go of Izuku's ear. As Izuku rubbed the side of his face, he sighed. Yeah, I guess you're right. He slumped slightly. Don't worry about it, young heroes. I'll take care of everything here. I just want to say, the two of you have great promise. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. He put a hand on both of their shoulders. Izuku's eyes shot wide as he stared at All Might with a gaping mouth. Toph basically had to drag him by his ankles to get him away from Japan's #1 hero. Geez, and here I thought you were over the whole hero worship thing, Toph murmured, a small smile on her face, as she pulled her ridiculous friend away. I'm sorry, how were you not freaking out? It was— Izuku shouted. It was— A guy. Toph cut Izuku off. A mildly impressive one, but still. Mildly impressive? Izuku's eyebrows shot up before seeing the shit-eating grin plastered on Toph's face. Oh yeah, very funny. I know, I'm hilarious, Toph shot back. Now where the hell is this girl anyway? We've been walking around for like half an hour. Thought you star kids were supposed to be smart. Don't tell me she got us lost. Or worse, you got us lost. Ha ha, Izuku responded. Wouldn't it be your fault? I mean, I'm not the one who can sense— Izuku stopped in his tracks as his eyes focused. Toph's blood ran cold. The two friends could only gape at the sight in front of them. Katsuki Bakugo was being strangled by the same damn thing that had nearly killed them. Is this my fault? Izuku thought back. The brief second he distracted All Might. It must have been enough. Enough for that thing to get away. And he wasn't gonna let someone be killed just because of a stupid mistake he made. Even if the person in question was kind of a prick. Toph didn't even need to hear a plan. She reacted the second Izuku's feet hit the pavement, launching him over the barricade of heroes trying to separate the villain from the crowd. They were just watching him die, waiting for an opening. As much as Toph despised Katsuki Bakugo from all the things Izuku told her, it made her sick. She tried to rush past them as Izuku landed, but she was restrained by one of the heroes, Kamui Woods. Midoriya pulled out the nightsticks and bludgeoned the creature in its yellow, unblinking eyes. Once again they struck their mark and the creature reeled in pain. This time, however, it didn't get delayed by it. The sludge creature quickly struck Izuku against the wall and pinned his torso down. Thinking quick to the Batman fights he'd seen against Clayface, he realized brute force might not be the best idea, so he tried to apply as much pressure as he could to a specific point of the creature's sludge body. He squeezed his arms around the creature's, managing to slice the sludge creature's misshapen hand from his wrist, only for it to whip around, slamming Izuku to the ground with the other hand. Izuku threw his makeshift batarangs, nearly batting Bakugo in the face too, before the creature pulled the screaming blonde back to his torso. I'm going to enjoy this. The creature appeared to grow in size, nearly blocking out the sun from Izuku's point of view. He could hear Toph screaming from him on the other side of the heroes. Heroes. Superman, Captain America, Iron Man, Batman. Izuku had idolized these people as long as he'd been alive. As long as he'd drawn breath, he just wanted to be like them. Now, as he stared down this beast, he realized he wasn't. He wasn't anywhere near as skilled as they were yet. He hadn't even begun serious training. He was nothing. Not yet. And now he might never get the chance. No. To hell with it. He was going to fight. Even if he was going to die here, he was going to make sure it wasn't for nothing. He was going to save him. He was going to save Bakugo. No matter what. I'm going to save him! Izuku's eyes lit with a passion that could burn the sun, as he threw himself toward the beast. The villain grew a wicked smile, as it prepared to end the young hero's life. Izuku Midoriya of Earth. Izuku heard the voice boom through his mind, but he drowned it out. He ignored it. It didn't matter. Nothing did. Nothing but saving Bakugo. You have the power to overcome great fear. Izuku's fist began to glow. It was changing. A giant glowing aura surrounded it as it formed into a hand, then a fist. A fist half the size of the building next to him. Izuku's new fist blasted the villain into pieces, freeing the nearly dead Bakugo, as words passed through Izuku's mind. Words that were not his own. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps. In the depths of space, the mighty Sinestro fumed. He had fired his first shot in the war of defection against the Green Lanterns, against Oa and her guardians. He thought he had locked away those troublemakers from Earth's region of space. The Earth was already troublesome enough without lanterns getting involved. Rumors were that they already somehow had one, despite no lantern ever being sent to that sector of space. But now, apparently, a ring had managed to slip his grasp. Another ring had disappeared to that accursed blue marble. And to make matters worse, it was the experimental one, the one that didn't require a power battery to function. He would have to go and see for himself eventually, but for now, the only thing he needed was to keep the situation from getting worse. The birth of the Sinestro Corps had to be concluded. He had to show the universe the power that fear could hold in good hands. Hey everybody! Probably a bit of a longer one, huh? Well, I hope you enjoyed. Until next time, I've been your captain, and it's been a pleasure taking you on a tour of a section of the strongest Earth in the multiverse. Goodbye now, and thanks for watching.